We're doing an episode on John Dillinger, his 1933 Hudson Essex Terraplane. We're going to shoot the first half at Little Bohemia, where they had the big shootout in Wisconsin, and then the other half in Washington, D.C., where the car is today. So that's the kind of stuff we're doing.
I wonder how many bullet holes went in that car. I mean, when I seen the pictures of it, I mean, you talk about Swiss cheese. That was it.
Well, that's the Bonnie and Clyde car.
Oh, okay, that's right. That's right. You're right. Yeah, that one looked like
Bonnie and Clyde car. Yeah, the Bonnie and Clyde car. It shot all to pieces. But we're doing an episode on too. It's in a glass case in a casino in Nevada, and I've already made contact with them, and they'd be like, "Oh, sure, you can come out and film it anytime you want." So everybody's been very gracious about letting us come out and film these cars. And we're going to do John Wayne's 1967, I believe it was, Oldsmobile station wagon that he had. He had the top modified where it was taller, where he wouldn't have to take his hat off to get in and out. We're going to do an episode on, let's see, Babe Ruth's last car, which was a '46 Lincoln Continental. So, yeah, we have quite the episodes lined up to do. We just need some sponsorship now. That's what I've been doing. That's what I'm doing now. I'm trying to get sponsorship to get this thing off the ground.
Well, it sounds very interesting. I mean, when you think about, Dillinger's car, Bonnie and Clyde, John Wayne even, having the means anyway, to have the roof raised. I mean, he was a tall guy, and, and some of the unique ones, I don't know whatever happened to, what was that, Steve McQueen and Bullitt? Whatever happened to that Mustang, do you know? Whoever ended up with the original one?
Don't know. I know there's a lot of replicas out there, but I don't know where the original one is.
Yeah, that would be, that was like a famous car. I mean, doing all those, stunt scenes with them and all that stuff. Especially especially, McQueen actually doing all the stunts. That's what, is kind of unique.
Right. Yeah, sort of like Tom Cruise boasts nowadays that he hangs off of airplanes and does all these crazy things. Another one we found, we did find that's going to be interesting. We found Camaro number 1, like 00001, first Camaro. There's a guy in Kansas got it, so we're going to try to do an episode on that. Just doesn't have to be celebrity cars. It's just cars that have a unique tale behind them.
Well, wasn't that car, too, the 001, I think I read about it. It was in pretty rough shape and sitting in somebody's garage or something, if I remember right.
Yeah, it was a dragster. They cut the wheel wells out of the back and put big old tires on, and this boy, this young man, was wanting him a Camaro to drag. And so they bought this drag car, and when they got to researching it a little bit, they found out it was the very first Camaro ever to come off the assembly line. So, it struck a nerve with them, and they're like, oh my gosh, we need to. They did some research and talked to some people, and with that rare and valuable a car, they spent, I think, 4 years completely restoring every nut, bolt, and washer back to original. So it's a masterpiece now.
Yeah, just think if they wouldn't have chopped it up in the first place. I mean, of course they wouldn't know. But I mean, if you look at the serial number and see that, that low a number, I mean, that car has to be worth a fortune. I mean, a total fortune.
Yeah, a very first one, a very last one, or a very unique one that, for whatever reason was custom built off the assembly line. Those are always very valuable cars as time goes on. Anything that's a custom order back in the day of the 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s is a collector's item.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I just regret some of the cars I had, and I had. Oh God, I can't remember. It was a 58 or 57 Ford, the one with the metal top that sucked down, and I had like I can't remember the model, not a Fairlane, God, But it was a low serial number on that thing, and it was really bad. Is that I had it when I was a teenager. That was like my second car I ever had, and I didn't really like it. It wasn't a girl's type of car. I wanted a '56 Chevy.
Right.
And it was funny. About a year after I gave it to a friend, it sat in his garage, and he decided to chop it all up and make whatever type of custom car. You know how younger kids are, like at 18, 19.
Right.
He wrecked it. But then all of a sudden, the Ford contacted my parents and wanted to buy the car back. And I always do the dumb thing.
Yeah. So you're talking about the retractable hardtop. Is that what it was? One of those Skyliners with the trunk, the metal top that went down in the trunk?
Oh, yeah. It was a nice car. I mean, it was really nice. But I didn't like the looks of it because, it didn't turn the girls on. When you're 18, 19, and 17, 18, 19 years old, you want, the car that the girls like. You want to have a decent looking girlfriend. I hate to say that, people out there listening, but it's kind of true at that age. At least it was in my generation. I don't know what it is now.
Right. I understand. Those are rare cars, though. They only made like 9,000 of those, and most of them are gone.
Yeah, that's, I learned my lesson. So what got you into writing this crash, in the last generation of the Cowboys in the 1890s something, the crash in Aurora, Texas? What got you interested in that?
Well, I had an event when I was a child that made me a firm believer in the enigma of UFOs. I was about 9 years old. My father was a staunch follower of the local police department. He had a realistic brand scanner, police band radio, beside his easy chair that ran day and night, where he could listen to all the goings on. He actually worked for the police department for 19 years as a part-time dispatcher, relief for vacations and such. But that was 1973, and there was a lot of UFO activity in 1973, not only in Georgia but across the country. And there had been reports for weeks of low-flying craft hovering in the area. There was even a report of a witnessed landing in Danielsville, Georgia, which is only 12 miles from where we live. But one night, his radio went crazy with locals. Folks were calling in saying that a flaming object had landed in the parking lot of the medical center clinic. Well, the clinic they were talking about was the same hospital complex that my mother had worked at since 1955. So, I'm 9 years old. I hear this, and I'm jumping up and down. I'm begging her. I was like, oh, my gosh, we got to go check this out. So here we go, tearing off in her green 69 Oldsmobile panel station wagon. And when we get there, there's a fire truck, 2 police cars, and 4 or 5 other locals that had heard it and came over to see what was going on, just like us. And there was no UFO in the parking lot, but there was something amazing there. There was a 30-foot circle that had been melted into the asphalt, and it was still blazing hot. And all around the outer edge of the circle were drips of molten metal that looked like silver or aluminum or melted lead that had been dripped into the asphalt. So, I mean, this is not something that I heard about or read about. This is something I saw with my own eyes.
Well,
the police.
Kerry, too, I had another guest on who's into UFOs and wrote a book about Tom Conwell. And, he heard our interview, and we were talking a little bit about that, and he goes, his feeling is that the UFO probably was basically he was saying overheating, and that they supposedly have some problems when they come to Earth's atmosphere. They overheat, and that it probably had to set down for something, to either cool down whatever it has to cool down. That was his gut feeling, but that was only his feeling.
Well, that could very well be, because the locals reported that it was flaming. So it was obviously very, very hot, maybe from entry friction. and maybe it did set down. I will tell you this: it was only there a few minutes, because from the time these telephone calls came into police and the time we got over there could not have been more than 10 minutes. And by the time we got there, it was gone. But something incredibly hot had set down for a very short time and then took back off again. And like I said, it literally melted a big circle in the parking lot. It was so hot you couldn't get real close to it. And so the next day it cooled, and the people from all over the county had heard about it, and it was on the local radio, and of course it was in the newspaper the next week. But it was drawing a lot of attention. So in the middle of the night, someone moved an asphalt crew into the area and completely repaved the parking lot. By Monday morning, when my mom went to work, she came home that night and said they had completely asphalted the entire parking lot, not only where the circle was, but the rest of the lot as well. So somebody went to great lengths to get that paved over and covered up really quickly.
Well, it sounds like they try to cover it up really fast. I mean, I don't think the owner of the parking lot or the local police, would sit there and say, hey, this needs to be covered up, right now. I'm just wondering if somebody made a phone call to, any of the government agencies and said, hey, we got this weird thing that happened. And they sent out a mock-up crew in the middle of the night to, re-asphalt it. But at least the hospital, from my understanding, probably got a new asphalted parking lot out of it.
I'm sure they did, because I doubt very seriously if they would have spent the money to done that fast. I mean, it's a little small town. Especially at the time, it was a little small town hospital, so they wouldn't have had the money to repave that parking lot that quickly. So yeah, it had some influence much higher up than the administrators of the hospital to make that decision that quickly. Because it was only there 2 days at the most, and about the second or third night is when they came in there. And and to repave the parking lot in the middle of the night, who does that?
Well, I would think to cover it up, because, to have a crew come out at nighttime to, re-asphalt and do anything. I don't care if it was back in the 40s or now. You're paying premium, wages and the cost to do it and everything at night. Plus, it'd be really hard to do at night. So, whatever they wanted to do when they found out about it, they wanted to get rid of it really quick.
Yeah, and that was 1973. I'll never forget that. That's the most vivid memory I have from my childhood. So anyway, that instance is what got me so interested in the Aurora crash. I'd read about, heard about, watched documentaries and stuff on Roswell since I was a teenager. So I knew the Roswell story pretty good. I read the, the 1980 book, I forget what it was, but the first big Roswell book. And then I read the 94 book, The Truth About the UFO Crash at Roswell. And so I knew about those, but I never heard of Aurora. Never ever heard the Aurora story, even though it's been done in documentaries and this and that. And a friend of mine from Texas was spending some time with me, and he was telling me about that, wondering if I ever heard about it. I said, no, I'd never heard about that. Then it wasn't too long after that I saw a documentary about it on Ancient Aliens. And so we had been, he and I had, his name's Johnny Cochran, by the way. He and I had been wanting to do something because he had some fabulous stories from his wild childhood. And I'd already started writing them down and going back and cleaning them up and trying to get something put together, trying to figure out what to do with it. And then when I heard about the Aurora story, I thought, that's what we should do. We should integrate those into a screenplay. A novel was never a concept for a long time, but I wanted to make a movie. So I thought, we could take some of those interesting stories and involve this crashed alien from 100 years ago, and we could hunt for him like 100 years later in the year 1997. And that's basically the way the whole thing started. We wrote the screen. We wrote